When you look across history, these massive movements, ancient religions, modern political waves, they just seem to surge up and reshape everything.
They really do. It's fascinating and sometimes, frankly, a bit bewildering to see how they compel people to act, to believe, even to sacrifice in ways that seem almost irrational from the outside.
Absolutely. And that's why today we're doing a deep dive into a real classic that tried to get under the hood of these forces.
That's right. We're unpacking Eric Hoffer's 1951 book, The True Believer, Thoughts on the Nature of Mass Movements. It's famously provocative. Hoffer takes this really unflinching, almost detached look at the fanatic, as he calls them.
The person drawn to a cause, any cause, really.
Exactly. So our goal here is to give you a shortcut, basically, to understanding the core mechanics Hoffer saw driving all kinds of collective action, regardless of the specific banner they fly.
Okay, so let's start with the big question Hoffer tackles first. Why do people do it? Why abandon your individual life to become a, quote, true believer? What's the pull?
Well, Hoffer's first big idea, and it's a bit of a bombshell, is that mass movements don't really appeal to people seeking self-advancement.
Not about getting ahead.
No. It's more about people who, in his words, crave to be rid of an unwanted self. It's this passion for self-renunciation that's key.
Wow, okay. So not self-improvement, but self-erasure almost.
Pretty much. He argues if your life feels irremediably spoiled, then individual goals seem tainted. What you want isn't just a better version of your life.
You want out.
Right. You want a new life, a rebirth, or a chance to acquire new elements of pride, confidence, hope, a sense of purpose and worth by an identification with a holy cause. It's a total reset.
That makes a certain kind of psychological sense. You're not climbing the ladder. You're jumping off to find a completely different structure. But get this part. Hoffer digs into this desire for change, and it's not what you might think.
Yeah, you'd assume it's just driven by the worst possible misery, right? Abject poverty, total oppression.
Exactly. But he says no. Discontent is likely to be highest when misery is bearable, when conditions have so improved that an ideal state seems almost within reach.
It's such a sharp observation. He puts it, a grievance is most poignant when almost redressed.
Think about that. It's when you're almost there that the remaining gap feels intolerable.
Precisely. He points out that the truly destitute, the ones literally starving, they're often too focused on immediate survival. Food, shelter, very concrete things.
Their goals are too concrete and immediate, as he says.
Yeah, they're often immune to the appeal of a mass movement in that active phase. Instead, it's the person who's seen things get a bit better, maybe tasted some freedom or economic improvement.
Like the examples he gives, the French and Russian revolutions, peasants had gained some land, some freedom.
And that taste of better things just ignites the desire for more, rather than calming them down. It paradoxically fuels the revolt more than utter hopelessness.
So it's less about a rational calculation of suffering and more about this feeling, the sense of power and extravagant hope, especially immediate hope, a psychological trigger.
Absolutely. Which leads right into who these potential converts are. Hoffer lists some interesting categories. It's not just the poor.
Right. He mentions the new poor, those who've lost something and remember better times. So they have that sharp grievance.
But also misfits, people who just don't feel they belong anywhere. The bored, which is fascinating.
Yeah, the idea that sheer boredom can make you susceptible.
And even thinners, people perhaps looking for redemption through dedication to a cause. It's just a deeper kind of void, doesn't it? Beyond just economics.
That point about fading creative powers really struck me too. The slipping author, artist, scientist.
When your individual source of meaning starts to dry up, the pull of an external collective cause can become really strong. It fills that vacuum.
It explains that idea of the conservatism of the destitute. They cling to the little they have versus the new poor who are ready for radical change because they feel they've already lost ground.
And Hoffer stresses something crucial here. For a movement to really grab these individuals, it has to weaken existing ties.
Like family.
Community.
Exactly. It must break down all existing group ties. Family, tribe, nation, church. Whatever provides that traditional sense of belonging. It's like clearing the soil.
Because once those are loosened, people are left kind of adrift.
Adrift, exactly. Standing alone, and therefore much more receptive to a new collective identity, a new group to belong to. He mentions early Christianity sometimes being at odds with family loyalties, or how invasions could weaken traditional structures, making people open to new ideologies.
It's about isolating the individual, making them an atom, ready to be fused into something new. Which brings us to the next point. How do these movements create such intense unity and willingness for self-sacrifice? Hoffer argues it's fundamentally about stripping people of their individual identity and distinctness. You stop being just you, with your unique worries and hopes.
You become the German, the communist, the Christian.
Right. You identify completely with the collective body. And the powerful psychological payoff is, as Hoffer puts it, as long as that body lives, he cannot really die.
Whoa. So it's a way to conquer mortality, in a sense, by merging with something perceived as eternal.
That's the core of it. And he says faith in a holy cause is to a considerable extent a substitute for the lost faith in ourselves. If you feel worthless individually, the cause gives you worth.
It becomes your purpose.
It becomes your everything, your only source of strength, especially when facing real danger like torture or annihilation. You feel you're part of something mighty, glorious, and indestructible.
He uses that example of Jews in Palestine versus Europe, right?
Well, yeah, it's a stark comparison. In Europe, facing persecution often as isolated individuals or fragmented communities, they were vulnerable. But in Palestine, united by the Zionist movement, seeing themselves as part of this larger, enduring entity, they showed incredible resilience, willing to die for that collective future.
That sense of belonging sounds incredibly potent. But how do movements keep that feeling going? Is it just the idea, or are there techniques, stagecraft?
Oh, Hoffer definitely thought so. He talks quite a bit about make-believe and a deliberate deprecation of the present.
Make-believe, how so?
He makes this chilling point that dying and killing seem easy when they are part of a ritual, ceremonial, dramatic performance or game. Leaders, he says, like a Hitler or even a Churchill in wartime, consciously mask the grim reality by framing it as part of a grandiose spectacle.
Turning sacrifice into performance.
And alongside that, they actively make the present seem drab and unimportant. Movements deliberately make it so, creating a dour, hard, repressive, and dull everyday existence for the individual believer.
Why would they do that?
To heighten the contrast with the glorious future they promise. You get this bleak present, coupled with the assured hope of a better future. The present becomes just a mere doormat on the threshold of the millennium.
So the future, the imagined utopia, becomes more real than the actual present.
Exactly. Hoffer's phrase is amazing. Things which are not are mightier than things that are. People fight most desperately for beautiful cities yet to be built and gardens yet to be planted, for something that exists only in the doctrine.
Which leads perfectly into doctrine and fanaticism. How does the belief system itself work in all this?
Hoffer says the doctrine acts like a fact-proof screen between the believer and reality. It filters everything.
Like an echo chamber, but totalizing.
Right. And he says something really provocative. Unbelief is necessary to make belief possible, meaning you have to actively disbelieve inconvenient facts or alternative views to maintain faith in the doctrine.
And the doctrine itself, is it always logical, clear?
Often not. He notes it's frequently unintelligible, vague, or unverifiable. But that might even be a strength. It's not meant for rational debate. It's meant for absolute faith.
And the fanatic? The person totally consumed by this.
Hoffer sees the fanatic as perpetually incomplete and insecure. They cling to the cause because it is their identity, their anchor. You can't reason with them, he says, only convert them to another cause, potentially.
Because the need is the same, regardless of the specific flag.
That's the implication. He talks about a strange kinship between fanatics of opposing sides, say a radical communist and a hardcore reactionary. Their psychology, their underlying need for absolute certainty and belonging is remarkably similar. Different jerseys, same type of player.
Okay, so if that's how they draw people in and keep them unified, what are the main tools, the unifying agents, as Hoffer calls them?
He singles out one emotion above all, hatred.
Hatred.
Yeah, he calls it the most accessible and comprehensive of all unifying agents. Why? Because it makes people oblivious of his will and future, frees him of jealousies and self-seeking.
When you're united against a common enemy, your own stuff seems less important.
Exactly. It simplifies everything. Which is why, he argues, a devil figure is indispensable for a mass movement.
A clear enemy.
A tangible enemy. Often foreign, often portrayed as singular, all-powerful, maybe secretly pulling all the strings. Think Hitler's use of the Jew, or Stalin pointing to the American plutocrat.
It gives all that free-floating frustration a target.
And Hoffer makes this really deep psychological point. Often, this intense hatred of others stems from self-contempt or a guilty conscience.
So you hate in others what you secretly dislike or fear in yourself.
That's the idea. You project your own inner turmoil outwards onto this designated enemy. It's a way of cleansing yourself psychologically.
Wow. Okay, besides hatred, what else helps unify?
He mentions imitation people adopting the manners, speech, dress of the group, helping them shed their individuality and blend in.
Losing yourself in the crowd.
Yeah. And crucially, action. Just doing things for the cause is incredibly unifying. Marching, building, fighting, proselytizing.
It keeps you busy, focused outwards.
Right. It provides self-forgetting. You don't have time or energy for self-doubt when you're constantly engaged in collective action. It gives you that immediate sense of purpose and worth.
Okay, we see why people join, how they unite. What about the leaders? Who drives these things? Hoffer has that three-stage model, right?
He does. It's quite neat. First, the men of words, intellectuals, writers, critics who primarily discredit the existing order. They plant the seeds of dissatisfaction.
They articulate the grievances.
Then come the fanatics. They're the ones who take that discontent and actually hatch the movement, give it momentum and direction. They have the absolute conviction.
The true believers who ignite the fire.
Exactly. And then finally, if the movement succeeds or endures, you get the practical men of action. They consolidate the power, build the institutions, manage the new reality, from critique to fervor to administration.
And what does Hoffer say makes an effective leader for these movements? Not necessarily a nice person, I gather.
Definitely not always. He lists traits like audacity, fanatical faith in the cause, understanding group dynamics, and crucially, the ability to evoke fervent devotion in a group of able lieutenants.
Building that core team.
But here's the kicker. What he says isn't needed. Exceptional intelligence, noble character, and originality seem neither indispensable nor perhaps desirable.
Wow. So smarts and ethics might actually get in the way.
That's his provocative argument. He even says charlatanism of some degree is indispensable. A bit of showmanship, maybe some manipulation, is necessary to capture and hold that mass devotion.
That's quite a cynical take on leadership, but maybe realistic for these specific contexts.
It explains why blind obedience becomes so appealing to the followers, doesn't it? Hoffer suggests for the frustrated individual, freedom from responsibility is way more attractive than freedom from restraint.
They want to give up the burden of choice.
Yes. To stop having to will, decide, and take the blame for failure. Submitting to a leader offers escape, a kind of perverse liberation into certainty and equality under the leader. It's a profound surrender.
So bringing it all together, Hoffer ends with this kind of paradoxical view of mass movements, right? They're destructive, but maybe also creative.
It's really controversial. He acknowledges the active phase, dominated by the fanatic, is usually unpleasant, if not evil, full of intolerance, destruction, suppression of thought.
Yeah, hardly sounds positive.
But, he argues, it can also be a miraculous instrument for raising societies and nations from the dead. A necessary evil, almost.
How does that work? Like burning away the old to make way for the new?
Sort of. He contrasts the sterility of that active phase, where dogma often stifles real creativity, with the burst of creativeness that can follow if the active phase is relatively short.
So the intense energy, once the initial fanaticism settles, can be channeled.
That's the idea, like a controlled burn that clears out underbrush and allows new growth. The upheaval, though destructive, can break stagnation and provide the energy for a renaissance. It's a stark, almost amoral observation about history.
It forces you to think about consequences beyond just the immediate awfulness. And reading Hoffer now, in our world, it feels incredibly relevant, doesn't it?
Eerily so. His closing thought that the true believer is everywhere on the march. You see echoes constantly, whether it's fueling passionate causes or intense opposition.
This deep dive into the true believer really gives you a different lens, a powerful, sometimes uncomfortable one, for looking at collective human behavior. It pushes you past the surface ideology to the psychological needs underneath.
Absolutely.
So maybe the thought to leave everyone with is this. What does Hoffer's unflinching look at the true believer really tell us about that constant push and pull inside us between our need for individual freedom, for autonomy, and that incredibly powerful, undeniable lure of belonging to something bigger, something that feels permanent?
That tension between the self and the group, it seems fundamental, doesn't it?